Hello, it's the 22nd of July. This is Renew Every Morning, and I'm Paul Anderson-Walsh. Well, as always, thank you for being with me. Today, we're going to look at another of our postcards of grace, and this is for me a masterclass in how to speak truth to power. I'm thinking of a character called Nathan. He's the prophet who told the truth. And you'll remember Nathan, I'm sure, from the story in 2 Samuel, where he confronts David, and he confronts David about his infidelity and the egregious thing that's happened with over Bathsheba. Now, of course, the thing you'll remember is there's a one verse that kind of stands out from 2 Samuel that kind of really captures this whole story, and it's this verse in chapter 12, verse 7. Then Nathan said to David, "You are the man." Now, he doesn't say, "You're the man." He said, You are the man. But I want you to notice something. He doesn't shout at David. He doesn't shame him. He doesn't storm the palace. He doesn't try and impeach him. Instead, he comes to David with loving truth and tells him a story. And he tells David a story about a poor man who had a steep stolen from him by a rich man. And this rich man took what didn't belong to him from this poor man. The rich man had every conceivable delight that he could imagine. But this poor man had barely nothing. And the rich man stole a sheep from him. Well, David hit the roof. He was so outraged by the injustice because the story connected David to the truth of who he was. He's someone who cares about social justice. He's someone who cares about fairness. And this was dreadful. And he said, no. He didn't realize it was a story. He thought it was a report. And he said, listen, remember, no clue that it's a parable. He thinks Nathan's telling him something that's happened. He said, I want a punishment for this man. It needs to be exacted and needs to be done right here, right now. And then came the turning point. And this is the pivot of this prophecy, because Nathan turned to him and said, but you're the man. No drama, no self-righteousness, just you're the man in the story, David. Except it wasn't about a sheep, it was about a wife, a woman. It wasn't about a poor farmer, it was about one of your own men, Uriah the Hittite. So he just uses truth, but it's truth that's spoken in love, not self-righteousness, in love. And I think this is really, really important, because Nathan's name means he hath given. And I think the idea of this is that he hath given Nathan voice, he's given Nathan responsibility, he's given Nathan access, and he's given him truth. Now, let me just say to you, there will be times in your life where you are given voice, you are given responsibility, and you are given access and to be able to deliver the truth to somebody. But the really important thing when you're dealing with people who are in power is that you learn how to speak truth to power properly. You see, Nathan had the position for sure. But the thing is this, he didn't use his position in the palace to please himself and to advance himself. He used his position in the palace to advance the kingdom, or to bring the kingdom back to where it needed to get to. And this is the important thing. What I've realized about this whole idea of speaking the truth in love is this, is that if I can learn to speak to you without offending, then there's a chance that you'll learn to listen to me without defending. But if I offend, you'll defend. And here we've got a lovely example. There's no offense, so there's no need for the defense. So remember that many people will speak truth without love, or love without truth. But it's only as speaking the truth in love that we build one another up. That's how it works. And this, I think, is where we find this wonderful prophetic power at work. Sometimes, by the way, to love you means risking my relationship with you. And I might have to ask myself, do I love you enough to tell you the truth? And then, do I love you enough to tell you the truth in the way you may be able to get hold of it? Because real love doesn't really protect itself, it protects the other. That's the point. It'll sacrifice itself and the benefits of the relationship it has with power for the sake of that person it's in relationship. Sometimes that means saying the thing that the other person might not want to hear. They might not want to hear it at all. But the question becomes, do you care enough to tell the truth? Do you love people enough to risk their anger? Do you trust God enough to lose that relationship for the sake of restoration? Nathan did. And so did David, because here's the grace in this story. This is where this story is so perfect. David listened. David didn't deflect. David didn't lash out. David didn't punish Nathan for his boldness or his presumption, whatever you want to call it. David repented. David says in 1 Samuel 12, he says, I have sinned. I have sinned against the Lord. No excuses, no nonsense. It's just hands up. That's it. We don't need a comms department. I don't need to get someone to spin anything. I don't need a press release. I don't need anybody out front. I messed up. And you'll know very well that a lot of David's psalms are written as kind of almost like spiritual journals, if you like, reflections on his own life and things that are happening to him. And Psalm 51 is the psalm that is related to this particular episode. And it's the psalm of a broken-hearted person. But it's also the psalm of confession and renewal. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. That's what he said. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and create a renew, there's our word, a right spirit within me. The prophet had spoken and the king had responded. So this tells us something too, right? This tells us that David may have failed, but he was teachable. And that's very, very important. And maybe Nathan knew that. David wasn't Saul. His heart, even though it was wounded and wayward, was still after God. And this teaches us, I think, some principles about divine confrontation. Right? I just want to offer you some thoughts. I think one, start with a story, not with a sword. I love the fact that Nathan opens with a parable, not with prosecution. He doesn't come to him with that. He invites David to feel before he asks him to see. And that's a very important point where you're going to bring someone to correction. There's this sense of courage without contempt. You see, there's something very powerful about the idea of coming to somebody with non-judgment. And when you come with compassion and non-judgment and acceptance and deep insight, then you really can begin to move really tricky problems. Truth-telling is never about volume, it's about virtue. And Nathan stands tall without any need to tear down, because he's not trying to tear down, he's trying to build back up. Truth as a mirror, not as a mallet, not as a hammer. That's important. So if you're going to hold a mirror up to somebody, hold it up lovingly. It's a holy rebuke that reveals his soul. It doesn't crush it. Nathan lets David see himself carefully and clearly, not cruelly. He doesn't do that. And always speak to restore. Never speak to ruin. Always speak to restore. Our goal is to build up, not to tear down. The goal is not the goal is not exposure. That's not what we're trying to do. Healing is the goal. And Nathan comes not to shame but to save, and then keep God right at the center. Nathan speaks not from personal grievance but from divine commission, and that I think is super important. So, but please hold on to this. Speak the truth, but not to punish. If your goal is to punish, even if it's truth, it won't land. Speak the truth, but not to punish. Nathan's confrontation wasn't about control, it was about compassion. That was the whole point of it. His truth was aimed at David's throne. It was not an arrow that was aimed at his heart. So today, what's our takeaway from this? Well, sometimes love has to speak. And it speaks not to tear down, as we've already said. It speaks to build back and build back better. Nathan reminds us that grace isn't always soft. Sometimes it has to do the really hard yards, sometimes it has to stand up. Sometimes it has to call out. Sometimes it has to put itself at risk. But that's the way of it. But when truth is spoken in love, when that happens, and when love listens with humility, redemption begins. So that's our story. May you be encouraged today. May you be renewed in love. And may you, when the opportunity comes, be bold and speak truth to power. All right. Great to see you. See you tomorrow. God bless. Bye-bye.